Hobby Quick Hits. Delivering that breaking hobby news directly to your earlobes. You want to know those hot drops from the card shop? We've got you covered. With your host, John Newman.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 123 of Hobby Quick Hits. If you listened to last week's show, you might know this is part 2 of some of those personal stories I've shared on not only this show, but Sports Card Nation. And I can't remember what episodes they are, and people ask me about them, and I figured I'd put them together into one bigger episode. The episode was getting too long, so I said, you know what, let's make 2 weeks, 2 episodes. And so this is part 2 of some of those half interesting personal stories I've shared on some of my, content, but I put them all together in one place. And this is airing during the National. So you will not get, I couldn't do the full show, so you'll get a Q&A. But there'll be no news release, no hobby news, no release schedule. We'll just do the Q&A. We'll get to the stories, and we'll call it an episode. We'll be back on regular format when we return from Atlantic City and get home. So a little bit on the shorter side, but that's okay. This episode's called Hobby Quick Hits for a reason. It's short to begin with. So I hope you find these interesting. If you if you're just listening to this episode, again, this is part 2. Check out part 1, which aired last week. With that being said, let's hear from our great sponsor, Mojo Breaks. We'll do that Q&A that we try to do every week, and we'll get to interesting or half interesting stories, part 2.
MojoBreakShop.com is the best place to get your sealed wax products and brakes. They not only have the best selection, but the best prices. Whether it's a box or a whole case, they are your guys. They ship worldwide to your doorstep. Their reputation as one of the most trusted in the hobby goes unmatched. They are the 2021 Topps Rip Party Champion Breakers. From sports card to Pokemon cards, their selection can't be beat. They offer daily deals and pre-orders.
Hey guys, John Newman here. Mojo's prices are already great, but to save an additional 10% off anything in their store, use the code QUICKHITS. That's QUICKHITS. Check out the full service store that's open 7 days a week in Santa Clara, California, or the website at mojobreak.com.
Time for the segment where you ask me a question and I answer it here on the podcast.
This week's question came way of my email from, hope to say this last name right, first name's easy, Anthony Lodelio. Thank you for your question, Anthony. Hopefully I didn't kill your name. But he basically asks, are you worried about the hobby right now? Worried? I guess I worry about the hobby all the time, even, when things aren't always down, right? I've just been in the hobby long enough. I'm guessing you're asking that from the angle of prices coming down, things lower priced, the change with Fanatics and all the licensing and all that. I'm assuming you didn't really get specific, so I'll answer from that angle. Yeah, I've said on my shows that the next, 2 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years are going to be crucial with the new licensing, how much stuff gets produced, macroeconomics, what's going on in real time, in real life, and the hobby's real life too. I hate when I say real life like the hobby's something else, but real life macro, macroeconomics. And so, yeah, I am concerned about, we just came down off an incredible trajectory, and now things are sort of, going down and to the left and sort of continuing that way. So, yeah, I'm concerned that we could be in for some leaner times, if you will, but that doesn't always mean bad things. It means what we're seeing right now. It's a great opportunity to buy some cards. At the time of this airing, just got back from the National. I'm kind of was interesting to see, what was going to happen at the National. It's sort of an indicator, usually, of what kind of shape the hobby's in. So, yeah, concerned. I don't know about worried. Maybe that's too strong of a word, concerned. But again, I'm always concerned. I was concerned when things were great and all up and to the right. Everything was exploding. Everything was a home run. Everything you could double, triple, quadruple your money on. I was concerned then. Happy things going right. I was a benefactor of that, as were most people, right? But I'm always concerned. So maybe a little extra concerned now during these times. Sure, I'd go that far. Welcome to part 2 of some of the interesting stories that I have shared on different episodes of the podcast. The last week went a little longer than I thought, and I said, you know what? Rather than making one huge hour-long episode, let's just break it up into 2 parts, and this is part 2. So when we left off on last week's show, I had talked about Orestes Destrada, coming to dinner, giving me a broken bat, and years later catching up with him and having to sign the bat. So the next story is around the same time. It was probably about a year later, 1984. Same deal. Fort Lauderdale Yankees had went to a game, and I was inside the stadium and along the fence where you would get autographs. And a man kind of came near me, and I looked at him, and he looked vaguely familiar. And then I realized it was comedian Billy Crystal. And even as a kid, I was sort of a big Saturday Night Live kid. Even though I'm living in Fort Lauderdale, I'm a New York City kid, and that's a New York City show. And so I had recognized him. This was before he got super big, but he was making a name for himself, became a regular on Saturday Night Live. He was in other stuff, too. I had seen him in, some comedy special. And it was, again, before the game. Was early. I think they were still taking batting practice, so he was watching batting practice. I was watching batting practice. And he said, hey, kid, if you know Billy Crystal, even, what you kind of see on the air is really sort of how he is. And how you doing? You like baseball? And, he's a huge Yankee fan, and I don't know what he was, in town for, maybe a comedy club appearance, and figured he'd catch a single A Yankees game. Very friendly, asked me if I played baseball, asked me a lot of questions pertaining to how my season was going, what I thought of do I go to a lot of Fort Lauderdale Yankee games, who's good, who to look out for, just very friendly. And it was very, very cool moment. And we wound up talking. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but, we talked for between 20 and 30 minutes, and it was really just me and him there. My grandfather was in his seat waiting for me. I don't even think, I don't know if he saw or realized who that was talking to me. And, like I said, talked for about 20, 30 minutes. Then more people started to show up. And I don't know where he wound up going, maybe the press box or something. But, he had said, hey, it was nice meeting you. He knew my name because he asked it. He goes, nice meeting you, John. Good luck on your baseball season. Enjoy the game. And so, cool 20, 30-minute conversation with Billy Crystal, me as a 12-year-old. He was just going to start to really break big, and was a fun moment. I remember getting back to my seat, and, I told my grandfather, I was talking to someone, Billy Crystal from, he's a New Yorker, Long Island. He goes, "Oh, really? He's here? You talked to him?" I'm like, "Yeah, he came up along the fence." He goes, "Oh, that's neat." And we tried looking where he might be. Like, we looked around, like he's still in sight, but we didn't see him. So I'm assuming he went up probably in the press box to sit with the GM or someone from the team and that sort of thing. So didn't see him again, but pretty cool moment there, brushing up with Billy Crystal. Same year, like I said, was playing at that time Little League Baseball, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, my team, I played on a traveling all-star team, and we were trying to get to Williamsport for the Little League World Series. I was pitcher, shortstop, and had not lost a game on the mound that year. We're making a run to try to get to the Little League World Series, and we had to win one more game in the regional to get to Williamsport, and we were all excited. My coach was a former Major League player for the San Diego Padres named Tom O'Day. Didn't play long, but played a lot of minor league ball. I always told him he was the greatest coach I ever got to play for. I learned the most stuff from him. And so we had one more game to win, and we were going to be able to go to Williamsport. And Coach O'Day, came up and said, "You ready to pitch, John?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And so we go to the stadium where the game was going to be played in Fort Lauderdale. And, we didn't know much about the other team. They were, this is, you're 12 years old, 13 years old, and not a lot of film at this point, at that level. So we're in our side of the dugout, and I look across to their dugout, and I see predominantly like a lot of shorter kids. And I've been undefeated so far pitching on the mound on the season. I don't know if it was 12-0 or 16-0, and pitching very well. I looked across, and you size people up, right? And I see one kid's got good size, but the rest of them all look like kind of slap hitters type, fast guys. Like if you can keep them off the bases, you'll be okay. I didn't see a lot of home run hitters, other than the one kid that looked like a good size. Took the mound, and this team was, looks can be deceiving, right? Never judge a book by the cover. And these guys hit line drives into the gap, base hits, got on base, caused some havoc. And honestly, I did not have a great outing. I didn't so much pitch bad as these guys were a lot better than I'd given them credit for. And got down a little early, and we tried to rally, but wound up falling short. But I rarely, I don't even know if maybe one other time in the regular season I gave up a long ball. I'm not trying to be cocky, but I didn't give up too many home runs. I changed speeds, had a nasty curveball, tried to keep people off balance. But the bigger size guy or kid that I mentioned, he did take me deep in that game. Their team went on to go to the Little League World Series. They didn't wind up winning it, but they got to go. And the young man that took me deep in that game, you might recognize the name as I'm about to tell it to you. His name was Jason Veratech. Wound up being a big-time catcher with the Boston Red Sox. I believe we won a World Series ring with them. And so Jason Veratech's team beat my team. He took me deep, and they went to Williamsport in the Little League World Series. A pretty interesting story there. One more story to share from the compilation of all the shows. I made one or two, I should say, shows out of some of the side stories that I've shared that people have found interesting. And a listener or two asked me to do this because they were having trouble, finding them in the episodes because I didn't ever, the episode title doesn't indicate what episode. So I had two gentlemen ask me if I could do this kind of show. I started with last week's. It went a little long, so this is part two. So if you're just listening to this, part one was last week. Go back and check those stories out. 1989, I'm in Syracuse, New York. 17-year-old junior, and living with my dad and grandmother. And my dad, if you've heard me talk about him, grew up literally in Ebbetsfield, huge Brooklyn Dodger fan, met a lot of the players, shook hands with them, got their autographs. And so I asked my dad, he told me all the stories. I'm like, where are all the autographs you got? And he's like, oh, John, I wish I still had them. They, and move in and played some travel, and all the stuff he did, they probably got, he said, Grandma probably, not on purpose, but they probably got thrown away. I don't have them any. And I'm like, I had a book with all these addresses of current and former players. And I'm like, we should write to these Brooklyn Dodgers and, tell them what they meant to you. I would write something in there that you shared some of those stories. I was a Jackie Robinson kid. Obviously he was gone, but that, while I wasn't around when the Brooklyn Dodgers were in Brooklyn, they still meant a lot to me and the city. And so me and my dad, got these addresses, wrote a bunch of letters. These were handwritten letters. People like to use form letters with TTM. And we wanted to write these by hand. So me and my dad would each write something. We included a self-addressed stamped envelope, and we included index cards and about 3 or 4 of them. Asked whoever we were writing to, at their convenience, if they could, sign the index cards and send them back if they didn't mind. And I don't know how many we sent out, 40, 50 of these things to all the Brooklyn Dodgers that my dad recognized and remembered and saw play. And, we start getting responses. And, many of them just didn't send the cards back signed, but wrote letters back saying what, our letter meant to them. Thank you for remembering an old ball player, no Dodger. I remember a couple of them wrote back that they actually were still friends with some of their teammates and went golfing or went to lunch. And thank you for remembering him. I remember one even, said, who he was friends with and went to lunch, and he got him to sign something. Some of them sent business cards. They were they own their own businesses, whether it be insurance or I think one had a hardware store. They would sign business cards, and they would send us this stuff back again with letters. And it was really, really cool moment. And my dad loved it. And we each still have a binder. Here we are. This is 33 years ago, 1989, 1990, kind of over that span. And so 33 years later, we still have all those signed index cards. We put them in like baggies and sealed them. When I say baggies, we cut them, and that way it's protected, and then we taped them into this binder. And we also have like first day envelopes that we had sent if it was a player like Carl Erskine and those type of guys that had a little more prominent things. We might have included that if we had something like that. And they all, I think our success rate was probably like 95, if not higher. They all responded. And like I said, many of them sent correspondence back or extra stuff or articles that they were in or business cards. Many of them wrote letters themselves talking about their time in Brooklyn. And we have all this stuff still in a 3-ring binder. We protect it. We had the wherewithal in 1989 to know to preserve it. So we put this, kind of in sandwich baggies that's, go over the index card, and then we taped it in the book. And I've posted videos of this binder at various times on my social media. You can kind of go back and look for it. But, we still have this binder. Unfortunately, 33 years later, very few, if any, of those gentlemen are still around. And so, Tommy Lasorda wrote back, Preacher Rowe, Carl Erskine. I mean, the list goes on. And we each have our own Brooklyn Dodgers binder with all these index autos, business card autos, and whatever they sent back, first day envelopes, all that stuff. And, they're all, for the most part, maybe with the exception of a couple of them, they're all gone. But we, for my dad, he got to relive his childhood a little bit and get some of the autographs that he once had again. And for me, it was a great memory of me and my dad doing that. And, the Brooklyn Dodgers, even though they were gone before I was even around, between, what I thought of Jackie Robinson and what I know that team meant to the city, it's still a great keepsake of mine. It'll be handed down. I've talked to my son Jordan about it. That is something he's going to get, and I've been, I told him to keep it, and I'd like to see it passed down through the generations in the family. So, pretty fun time in 1989-90. Me and my dad, kind of our project we did together, and we learned in the process, and sort of made friends, if you will, with those players back then, and great memories. Whenever I pull that book out and look through it, sometimes if my dad comes over, we'll pull it out, and it's just we go back to 1989 and 90. We were both younger men, me being 17, and my dad was, I think, 42 at the time. So, it was a fun time. So, always will have that book, and like I said, pass it down to my son Jordan, and so on and so forth. So I hope you enjoyed some of those stories that I shared. Not to be braggadocious, but I got a lot of feedback on a lot of these stories that I shared in different episodes, and then, like I said, had a few people who had heard me refer to them in brief on other episodes and said, I can't find when you were talking about this. Would you ever consider doing a show where you kind of put them all in one? And so that's how this week's and last week's episode came about. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know give me some feedback, what you think, and we'll see you next week. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with some closing thoughts.
Check out our website at www.sportscardnationpodcast.com for the new release schedule, our blog, all show episodes, and so much more.
All right, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed. This was, again, part 2 of those stories. Hope you enjoyed them as much as maybe last week's. If you didn't catch last week's, you can always backtrack and head those. And I just wanted to, again, sort of put these all in, closer proximity, all in one kind of general area, because I do get every once in a while someone will ask me more about, that story that was on the show where they didn't maybe catch it or was mentioned in passing by myself on maybe another episode. And so I wanted to give more details, or just kind of put them all in one spot for easier reference, if you will. Again, sort of different. I tried to pick out some interesting stuff from my life. Some are probably more interesting than the others, but I appreciate you for giving the time to the show and listening. Again, hopefully it wasn't too boring for you, but I tried to pick some of the more interesting stuff, and I tried to pick the stuff that I already talked about on the show. So thank you as always. I hope the National, as it's concluded now, was fruitful for you, and you had fun, and you enjoyed yourself, picked up some things. Maybe you got, we met and talked a little hobby. Hopefully that was the case, but we'll see you next week. I'm sure we'll be more of it'll probably be a review show, as I pre-recorded this in planning for my trip to Atlantic City. We'll probably do some review material, and then we'll get back on, I don't want to say regular schedule, but where we're not talking about the National all the time. But one of the other reasons I wanted to do these 2 personal story show is to do some non-national content. I've done plenty of it. There's plenty of it out there, and just wanted to do something different in the couple weeks here leading up to the greatest show in hobby. All right, we'll see you soon. Take care. Be well.